last month or so, we have refreshed the church office. We have new paint, we have new carpet. It looks so much fresher and lighter in here. It's a delight to come to work. I'm back in the back. These are the 3 offices of the pastors here in our church. What I really want to show you are these doors. These are the doors of the pastor's offices, and on each door there is a sign. And these signs are cheap, $4.27 plastic. They're replaceable. They slide right on and off the door. And so every morning when I open my door and see this sign, it is a wonderful reminder. It's a reminder that though I have been here 5.5 years and this sign has been here 5.5 years, it could be replaced. I'm replaceable. I'm not the most vital and important thing that happens around here. And while I plant seeds and make a contribution, I'm not the one who is doing the real work here. That is God who's doing the real work. In other words, this sign humbles me. And the Apostle Paul would say that's a good thing. As we continue our lesson today, Lessons from the Church in Corinth, we're going to see Paul teach the church in Corinth about the importance of humility, about the importance of placing their abilities and their needs under the lordship of Jesus Christ. Humility plays an important role in connecting us and helping to build community that is Christian. Apparently, like every other church I've ever served, the Corinthian church had issues with power grabs and egos, and Paul wants them to remember that it's God who is doing the work and God who is in control.
My wife and I are the definition of equal partners. In fact, in the New Testament, we are mentioned 6 times. Always together, never individually. 3 times Priscilla is mentioned first, and 3 times I am. That indicates that we are considered as equally important, and I'm totally okay with that.
The church that Paul established in Corinth was challenged by a large number of problems. For many years, Paul wrote letters and sent people to help them overcome their challenges.
Before I tell you more about our relationship, you need to know a little bit more about Corinth and its relationship to Rome. In 150 BC, it was not clear which city would dominate the Mediterranean Sea. The 2 main powers were Carthage and Rome. They had been fighting for over 100 years with the 3 Punic Wars. Heard of Hannibal and his elephants? They were fighting Rome in the Second Punic War. In 146 BC, Rome defeated Carthage and completely wiped it from the face of the earth. The main remaining obstacle to Rome's complete domination of the Mediterranean Sea was Corinth and its allies. In the Battle of Corinth, also in 146 BC, the Romans defeated Corinth and wiped it from the face of the earth, after killing all the men and selling the women and children into slavery. From that time on, the Romans plundered Greece. They stole statues, treasures, and artists. They took over the Greek language and philosophies. They even stole the Greek gods and gave them Roman names. They took ownership of the land, but they had to stop there. They couldn't take the land back to Rome.
As typical, Paul opens his letter with favorable greetings, reminding the Corinthians that God has given them every necessary gift and that God is always faithful. He immediately addresses the problem of divisions in their church. He wants them to be unified in all of their actions and words. Paul is crystal clear that there is no distinction in his or Apollos' teachings concerning Jesus, so that is not reason for division. This will not be the last time that Paul pleads for unity in a church. Paul immediately moves to talk about the power of the crucified Jesus. He reminds them that the cross is central to the gospel. He talks about the Holy Spirit being the only source of wisdom. As Greeks, the Corinthians are inclined to see wisdom in philosophy, but Paul reminds them that wisdom comes from having the mind of Christ. After establishing the authority of Jesus and Holy Spirit, Paul returns to the subject of divisions in the Corinthian church. He reminds them that no individual is as important as a unified church. Any individual who wants to be inappropriately important is essentially destroying God's temple, something that God will not accept. He tells them that they each belong to Christ and has no right or capability to be important on their own. Some of the Corinthians think they are as wise and knowledgeable as the apostles and Christian leaders. They think that their teachings are just as important and authoritative. Paul directly confronts these people and reminds them that the leaders are God's servants who are charged with leading the churches no matter what personal hardships they endure.
Hear now the words of the Apostle Paul in his first letter to Corinth, the 3rd chapter, verses 4 through 9, and then picking up in verses 18 to 23. The Greek is translated into English by the New Revised Standard Version this way. For when one says, I belong to Paul, and another, I belong to Apollos, are you not merely human? What then is Apollos? What is Paul? Servants through whom you came to believe as the Lord assigned to each. I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the growth. So neither the one who plants nor the one who waters is anything, but only God who gives the growth. The one who plants and the one who waters have a common purpose, and each will receive wages according to the labor of each. For we are God's servants, working together. You are God's field, God's building. Do not deceive yourselves. If you think you are wise in this age, you should become fools so that you may become wise. For the wisdom of this world is foolishness with God. For it is written, He catches the wise in their craftiness. And again, the Lord knows the thoughts of the wise, that they are futile. So let no one boast about human leaders. For all things are yours, whether Paul or Apollos or Cephas or the world or life or death or present or future, all belong to you, and you belong to Christ, and Christ belongs to God. Hey there, Bible scholars. It's time for your 1-minute Greek class. Our word today is Sophia, translated as wisdom in your scriptures. Wisdom is about seeing things clearly, and Sophia is the root of our words sophistication, which means the art of using wisdom, and philosophy, the affection of wisdom. It is the insight into the true nature of things. In the Hebrew Bible, Sophia is God's wisdom and is with God at the onset of creation. Wisdom is God's living presence in the world, compassionately and actively advocating for justice and shalom. So what does wisdom have to do with humility? Well, Paul turns the Greek idea of wisdom on its head, connecting the Hebrew idea of wisdom as God's active presence in the world to Christ's presence in our church. Paul commends us to put God's wisdom above the wisdom of the world.
As Paul's letter continues, we get a window into the messy nature of communal life in the Corinthian church. Paul alludes to divisions and controversies that separate the community and keep them from moving forward in ministry and mission. The community is divided into camps that feel allegiance to various leaders, Apollos, Paul, and Christ. We also find allusions to various types of wisdom, understandings, and philosophies competing in the Corinthian church. In the Corinthian church, much like today, people thought that if they were educated and wise, they must be important. Paul's antidote to these quarrels and his prescription for building connection and community is humility. Remember who you are, says Paul. You are a worker, a builder, a servant. You are part of something larger and more spectacular that is being created by God. Paul lifts up humility as the key. Humility about what we know, humility about what is important, humility about our organizational structures and our righteousness. How do you think understanding God's wisdom connects us to humility? And how does humility connect us to one another?
Hi friends, how is your 9 to 5 practice going? If you're not sure what I'm talking about, no worries at all. We are encouraging folks who are participating in this study to put some of the ideas from Paul's letter to the community in Corinth into practice in their own lives and their own communities. And I'm calling it a 9 to 5 practice to encourage you to think of this as a daily practice and not to discourage you if you happen to miss a day or if you want to do more. The idea is to cultivate connection. And this week, our practice centers on humility, putting others ahead of ourselves. And our 9 to 5 practice is to offer ourselves the opportunity to do just that, to be mindful of the opportunities this week to place others first. Maybe it's taking time to do a quick favor for someone. Maybe it's simply taking the time to reconnect with a quick visit. Maybe it's just a phone call, or maybe it's meeting someone for a cup of coffee. But if you want to step up your game, I challenge you to take the time to listen to someone who's different than you or who doesn't share your opinions. Not to persuade, just to connect. Surely this is worth a little extra credit, I guess. But as you reflect on your practice this week, think about how it made you feel. Did putting others first increase your connection to them? Well, I hope it also increases your connection to Christ. And I hope that you will share these feelings by writing down a few words about this practice on the strip of fabric that was provided. And if you don't have one, no worries. We have plenty more at the church, and you can we'll make sure that you get one. Or if it's easier, just write a few words down to share with your Connect group next week, and we can add them to our fabric collection. We'll be collecting these strips on Sundays throughout the study, and we're going to gather them together and use them for a collaborative art project at the church. And trust me, it's going to be beautiful, and I can't wait for you to see it. I hope that you will find this 9 to 5 practice to really be meaningful and nurturing this week.
So here are a few key takeaways from this lesson. And the first is that pride is an amazingly corrosive thing in relationships and in community. Without humility, we overestimate how important we are and we push our own agendas. Without humility, we don't see others properly. We don't appreciate who they are and what they're bringing to the table. And without humility, our relationships, our communities can really devolve into power struggles. Secondly, it's humility
in our Christian relationships and within Christian community that puts the emphasis and the focus on God, on God's intentions, on God's grace. And finally, it's humility that will allow Christian community to show the world a different way of relating to one another, a way that actually points to God's intentions.